What real-world psychology tricks have you learned? Story 1. If you want to get information out of strangers, get them off guard and try to put them in a position of assumed superiority. Dressing a little shabby or just wearing one really stupid or ugly article of clothing helps. Appearing confused helps, and so does appearing tired. Think Columbo. If you're trying to get information about a person, imply familiarity. Don't ask a stranger what they know about Robert. Ask if they've heard from Bobby. Don't offer any explanation about why you want this information, unless they ask you. More often than not, they'll offer their own explanation that you can just agree with. Don't be afraid to cold call. Surprisingly, people will talk to you more often than not. Want to know something about someone? Knock on his neighbor's door. You will be surprised how much neighbors know about each other and how willing they are to share that information. To defuse situations of potential conflict, increasing usual personal space by 50% not only keeps you out of punching range, but it reduces perceived threat to the other party. Assume a non-threatening stance. Lean against a wall, slouch a little, fold your arms, etc. Make sure you're at a safe distance, though. The idea is to appear calm and relaxed, not timid. If you're dealing with someone who is a bully or rager, they are used to getting their way by implying threats, by being physically imposing, by yelling, etc. Those behaviors are designed to make you either be afraid or fight back. By doing neither, you confuse the bully and short-circuit the behavior. Lower your voice to quieter than normal levels. If an angry and agitated person suddenly becomes calm, they are probably about to take a swing. Story 2. You can get a lot of information out of someone by just being silent. Creating an awkward silence will make people want to say something to fill it up, even if it's something they'd rather not talk about. I believe doctors sometimes use this to make people get into detail about their problems. Learning to shut up is one of the best things I have ever learned. It instantly gives you that mystery vibe, or murdery vibe if you do it like a creep, and people love to talk. Story 3. My boss has used this trick for years, and until recently, it got me every single time without me really paying attention. I'll come into his office to talk about something, and if it's too busy, he'll get up and walk out as he's talking with you. You feel compelled to follow him, of course. He walks to your desk, and you feel compelled to sit back down. Then he walks away. You suddenly realize how you've been manipulated and feel stupid. Now, we've been working together for such a long time, I decided to break the cycle. One time, I just stood in his office when he passed me. He came back after a minute like, "Not gonna work, huh?" Story 4. If you're having a conversation with someone and you're unsure whether they're into it, you can make a change in the way you're communicating, either with body language or a slight change in accent, etc. If they start mirroring your change, cross their arms shortly after you do, you can assume that they're enjoying the conversation and listening to you. It's crazy how often it happens and you just don't notice it. Story 5. I try to smile whenever I make eye contact with someone, and especially if it's someone that I don't particularly like or doesn't particularly like me. 99% of the time, they will smile back at me. If you do this enough, your smile will actually be genuine. But this might not work if you have a really creepy smile. If someone is attracted to you, their eyes naturally open up more when they first see you. I either look for this in someone I am interested in or use it myself to, again, make someone who doesn't like me subconsciously feel less hostile towards me. To add to number 2, when I was a freshman in college, a friend of mine gave me a very valuable piece of information, which I have used several times since, and it has always been true. She said, when you're in a group and everyone is laughing, take note of who is looking at you. That person is attracted to you. This works as long as you have nothing to do with what is making everyone laugh. If you're just a bystander to the joke and the girl or guy looks at you while you're all laughing, then you know that you have an admirer. Try it out next time you're in a group of people. Story 6. The best way to make friends is to actually give a shit about people. Ask them about their day and actually care. People say, "How was your day?" all the time, and most people don't really care. Generally, if you ask someone about themselves, they'll like you. The reason I specifically focus on giving a shit is because many people have difficulty meeting new people, or thinking about questions to ask, etc. If you put all your attention into the other person, you become much less self conscious. The problem with a lot of people that have social anxiety is that they don't focus correctly. If you play a video game but are trying to figure out a math problem in your head, you'll probably suck at the game. If you want to have a conversation, put all your focus on the other person and stop thinking about yourself or work or politics or whatever. A lot of people have a few poor conversations, get it into their heads that they have no social skills, and spend the rest of their life forever alone. It's amazing how many people think that their lack of an ability to communicate is something immutable in their nature. It's like playing some Counter-Strike, losing, and then going, well, I guess sucking at Counter-Strike is just a part of my nature. If you avoid playing Counter-Strike again, and the few times that you do play you think, gosh, I suck at this, then yeah, you're always going to suck at Counter-Strike. But if you focus on Counter-Strike and keep playing, you'll get good. And just like Counter-Strike, socializing is a learned skill. Story 7. I do a lot of presenting, and one of my favorite tricks deals with the awkward Q&A phase after the talk, when people will periodically toss you a hand grenade of a question and expect a good answer. Sometimes I'll know the answer right off, but when I don't, I like to take a second to frame my answer. Thing is, if you do that while staring at the audience or saying, then people tend to discount whatever answer comes next, regardless of how good it might be. So my secret is to time it so that as the person wraps up the question, I'm taking a big drink of water, or popping a breath mint, or taking a bite of food. Lunch and learn talks. It's socially acceptable not to talk with your mouth full, so everyone gives you those seconds to think without noticing that's what you've done. As a bonus, people often find the timing funny and will chuckle, improving the mood in the room. Story 8. This may sound stupid, but while in the Air Force, a detective told me if I ever had to interview a witness, to wear a light blue or pastel colored shirt, since the light colors are calming to the eye and you don't appear as though you are a threat or an authority figure. To this day, I always wear a light blue shirt to job interviews and performance reviews and have not had a bad review yet. Story 9. After the original .com bust, I was out of work and ended up selling cars for a bit. A manager told me that if the customers are hesitant, to get them in the office so you can sit down and talk. I asked how I get them in the office if they are just looking and not interested. He told me to invite them to the office and just turn and start walking. They will follow. So a few days later, I got some folks that were just looking. They weren't going to buy, and I felt like it was insulting to ask them to discuss nothing at length. But knowing the managers are always watching, I did the deed. Started walking and felt like I was on fire from nerves and not knowing. After 40 yards or so, I got to the building and turned around. And boom, there they were, standing there, ready to go in to talk. People will follow you. Story 10. If someone tells you something, but can't tell you the details, in other words, it's a secret, wait a while and then bring it up again. But act like you can't remember what they told you before. They'll gladly help you fill in the gaps in your memory, which will include stuff they didn't tell you before. I've done this a few times, accidentally, and I've been surprised at how well this has worked for me. Story 11. Speak to children and people with mental disabilities and illnesses as though they are responsible adults, and you'll be surprised at those who rise to the occasion. So often I deal with sick children who are more upset because their parents are freaking out. I always separate the parents and have them sit in the front of the ambulance, speaking to the child in the back, and I swear on my favorite goggles that it has never backfired. The same goes for disabled stroke patients, the mentally retarded, the schizophrenic, the bipolar, the autistic, the elderly. Just speak to them as you would a normal human being. Let them know what's going on. Give them the slightest say in what's going on around them, and they'll calm down and almost always cooperate. Don't reach for the handcuffs first. Just ask nicely to have them sit down. Also, sometimes being a girl helps. Story 12. If I'm nervous and or feeling socially awkward, I will ask the person I am talking to about themselves. That is the one topic everyone is each their own expert on. It's an instant conversation booster. and the act of listening will make you more friends than talking, in my experience. Story 13. Anytime you encounter a dinner moment that feels awkward, just ask a ton of questions about their life. They'll think you're extremely charismatic when all you've done is make them talk about themselves. Never ask a yes or no question, because that just adds to the awkwardness. So, how did you get into this profession? Tell me about your family. What's your favorite part of living here? What's the hardest part of traveling? Or the best? I'm sure you've got a lot of great stories because of that. Story 14. Took cognitive psych at a big university. 220 students in the class. Only 40 showed up to each class. A few days before the final, when there was just 40 of us, she said, "One effective test taking technique that people don't often know to use is the memory dump." Har har. People cram hours before a test, but by the time you get to working on it, your short-term memory will start to fill with other things, and your answers will fade away. To counteract this, immediately turn the test over as soon as you receive it and write down everything you can remember as quickly as possible. Then, use that as a cheat sheet for the duration of the test. This is not against any rules, since you're still reproducing the material yourself onto the test paper, which proves it was recalled during test time. The final comes around, and people are looking around confusingly as some of us are madly scribbling on the back. Freaking aced that shit. Story 15. Tell something personal about your life. Be very open and honest in your conversation. Watch it be reciprocated 9 out of 10 times. Often, people always say, "I can't believe I'm telling you this." I never told that to anyone. I like it. It opens everyone up more, and you get a better understanding of that person and way more respect for them as a human being. Story 16. Alright, if you want someone to do some moderately big favor for you, ask them to do something even bigger that they'll almost always say no to. Then ask them to do the smaller favor, and since they feel guilty for saying no to the big one, they're more likely to say yes to the small one. For example, if you want someone to fill in as a camp counselor for you for a day that you can't show up, you can ask them to be a counselor for the entire week. Sounds desperate, and stress it's a good cause. They'll be busy, so they'll say no. Then you ask them if they can do it on just Saturday. They're more likely to say yes. If you ask someone to waste a Saturday up front, they'll probably just say no. They'll compare the first favor to the second, and it'll be much smaller and much easier to say yes to. And it's hard to say no many times in a row to someone you like. Story 17. This is a trick I enjoy doing to groups of people I meet in front of friends who already know about it, and usually have had it done to them before. I will tell an engaging story that people listen to, and I act animated while I do it. It doesn't have to be true or anything, just somewhat plausible and engaging enough that people are listening intently for the punchline of the story. While doing this, ask people to hold something at the same time and hand it to them. Do it passively. At the end, just walk away, and people end up holding stuff. On my birthday, my mother, my mom, my girlfriend, my brother's girlfriend, and a few friends were standing around, and I was telling a story. The story didn't matter. What mattered was that they were all listening intently. I ended up handing my mom a couple of boxes of Chinese food, my brother several dirty dishes. I put some cups in my brother's girlfriend's hand, in exchange for her wallet that she gave me in this mix, and several things in each person's hand. I finished the story walking away, and they all slowly came to the realization that they were all holding dirty dishes and trash that I handed to them for no reason. It's a fun party trick. Story 18. There are certain kinds of people, examples given police, authority figures, etc., who are really, really inflexible and try to stop you from bending stupid rules even slightly. They don't care about the rules. They just want you to be right and for you to obey them. So if you want to get your way, instead of arguing about how stupid the rule is, say something like, "Of course, you're right. I didn't know that. Thanks for telling me. Next time I will obey the rule." Story 19. Here's a great one for cops that's worked surprisingly well for me in the past. If you're pulled over, when the cop walks up to you, initiate the conversation by asking, "How are you today?" They have to answer something like, "Doing well," or "I'm okay, how are you?" Immediately, you have broken their defensive wall. I've gotten out of many tickets by getting on the cop's good side before he has even engaged me. That, or if you're pulled over for something minor, but you've done something incredibly exciting that day, get enthusiastic about it. I had just left a Hurricanes game and had an out headlight and was speeding a bit, and the cop asked where I was heading. "I'm heading home after the Canes game." "Oh, how was it?" Door open to me being super excited. Disclaimer: this does not work when, OMG, I was at this kegger. Story 20. Here's a trick I've learned from being in a happy relationship for years and working in the service industry. Don't try to deceive people with psychological tricks, or else you're going to acquire a bunch of friends who you don't like and will hate you when they finally get to know you. Be brutally honest always, and you will slowly learn your faults and find true companionship instead of living a lie your entire life just to get new jobs and avoid arguments. Story 21. In high school and university, when there was about 10 to 15 minutes left in class, I would zip my bag up, loudly a couple of times, up and down. What resulted was a cascading effect, everybody starting to put their things away. This would oftentimes lead the professor or teacher to let the class out early, as everyone is clearly packing up. The sound of the zipper triggered something in everybody. Pavlovian conditioning in action. Story 22. If you need to get hold of somebody via telephone, but you get their voicemail instead, there's a trick you can use that will always get them to call you back. It's sleazy, but it works 100% of the time. Call them and leave the voicemail. In the message, tell them you've discovered something important. Start describing the important thing, then hang up mid-sentence. They'll call you back ASAP because their curiosity will get the better of them. They've just got to find out what was so important, and if you did the message correctly, they'll think the only reason you didn't tell them the important thing was due to a telephone glitch. This trick works especially well if you're in sales. When the customer calls you back, make up something important and tell them. But the real purpose of the message was to get the customer to call you back, period. Now, you have an opportunity to sell. Like I said, sleazy, but it works. Story 23. The easiest way to lie is to know when to stop telling the truth. A man goes to a bakery in the morning to get donuts for his 3 children. While there, he buys a 4th that he's not supposed to have because of his diet, and eats it on the drive home. When asked, "What did you get at the store?" he can truthfully answer, "I got the kids some donuts." And because this is not an untruth, he's going to state it with far more conviction than if asked, "Did you buy yourself a donut?" and having to answer untruthfully, "No, I did not." In other words, to make sure that you're getting the right answer, make sure you phrased your question correctly. Story 24. At a college party not so long ago, I invented the imaginary beverage technique for making your way through a crowd. In the absence of a solo cup or other form of drink, I found that holding up your hand as if you had one makes the sea part significantly faster. Effects are amplified if you announce "imaginary beverage" while making your way through the crowd. I guess people just don't want beverages spilled on them, even imaginary ones. Story 25. Start touching your elbows together with a quizzical look on your face while hanging out with girls. When she becomes interested in what you're doing, say you can touch your elbows in front of you, but you can't touch them behind your back. Then bet the girl that she can't touch her elbows behind her back. It doesn't matter if she can or not, but her breasts will be poppin'. Story 26. You know how sometimes you're walking and you see someone walking towards you and you both try to move out of the way, but you end up walking into each other awkwardly? If you can see someone walking in your path, avoid eye contact. Make sure they don't see that you see them. That's the most important part. And just keep walking. 9 times out of 10, they will move past you without noticing or walking into you. Problem solved. Story 27. I want to get a new camera, but it's $2,000. There's another one I was looking at for $1,000. The one I really want, but it doesn't have all the features of the $2,000 camera. Not as nice, but a lot less expensive. What do you think?